This conference will now be recorded.
No
And
pressure.
now we'll go ahead and Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and you can just get started telling us about your wonderful presentation.
Very cool. Okay. Well, thanks, Josie. I'm excited to be here with you guys and share some of the things that I've learned along the way of this entrepreneurial journey that I've had. Like so many of you out there that are going through this, it's you pick up things along the way, and that's one of the things that I love to do is just share what's worked for me and my clients, and in hopes that it works for you, and we can all benefit from it. But as you can see here, our topic today is email marketing dead? And how to unlock hidden sales, multiply referrals, and skyrocket your profitability. Okay, so let me move, hold on, I'm gonna move this little thing there. Okay. All right, so as we get into this training, there's a couple of things we're gonna touch on. Two main things, and then show some examples. But first we're gonna talk about, what makes email just so darn special, okay? So email is an interesting topic. We'll get into the reasons why here in just a second, but we're going to talk about what makes it so special, and then we're going to get into how to get your emails opened and read. Okay, that's really the crux of the issue, and why, how to make email an integral part of your marketing, campaign or strategy, excuse me. And to find success with email it comes down to this: your ability to get your emails opened and your ability to get your emails read. Okay, and then we're going to show some examples from real life, some private clients, some of the stuff that we've done for them, and things that I've done on my own in years past as well. So, and also feel free, if you have, I know we have a chat box, you can type in some questions, things like that, and I'll do my best to answer those. We'll go through the training, and then I'll probably have some time at the end to do that. So love questions. That's always a great thing. So, all right, who is Mark Thackeray? Well, let me tell you just briefly. We'll give you a short background on this before we dive in. This is me and a beautiful Burmese python. This was at a client's grand opening event that I helped out with, and this was so cool. It was never done anything like that before, hence the look of surprise and exhilaration on my face. And this kid's face too down here is pretty classic as well. It was super fun. But anyway, I am married to my high school sweetheart, Allie, and she is just the best. So I'm lucky to have her. And we have 4 kids together. We've got all girls, batting 1,000 on that. And actually, we just added to that, we added another girl to the mix, a Norwegian daughter who is staying with us for the year. She's a foreign exchange student from Norway named Emma, and it's awesome. It's nice to, she's the oldest of all of our girls, so she's 17 and doing her senior year at Brighton High School. And it's fun to have a teenager, and we joke that we were practicing on her before our girls hit that stage. Now, but she's such a good kid already, so it's fun to have her. But I love, about me, I love to be active, enjoy pretty much all types of sports. I grew up the youngest of 7 kids. All were very involved in athletics, and so I kind of did everything. But I love specifically to skateboard, to snowboard, and to surf. Those are some of my very favorite things to do. I also love to bake bread. I love making focaccia and artisan bread, and actually just finished creating, I should have had a picture on this, but just finished building a wood-fired brick oven in the backyard. So if you need some Naples style pizza, then give me a call. We can set that up. And then last couple of things, I founded an agency, a marketing agency, that helps local businesses stand out through high converting social media campaigns and email marketing. So we're excited to talk about email today. It's one of the things we do a lot of. And then last, I'm a podcast host as well of a dental marketing podcast and a digital marketing podcast. So some fun stuff there. But I also wanted to share some recent some campaign highlights. Okay, just because not to boast or brag or anything like that, but just to show what's possible once you dial in your marketing strategy, okay, and your messaging. So we did a campaign for a client that was a month-long campaign, and it produced $204,000 in production over 30 days. It was It was for a one office dentist, and it was neat because it was just fun to see that success take shape. Previously their best was in a single month was I think about $76,000, and so we almost tripled what their previous best was with that. So it's fun to see that, to work with businesses to achieve remarkable results. This is one of our favorite clients, as a dog trainer that we work with, and we've doubled their revenue year over year this past year. And it's just life-changing what can happen when you have a marketing strategy in place that's predictable, that produces results consistently year after year. Another fun one was a $7,600 from one single email campaign for a photographer. And then we've doubled the referrals for a dental office. In just 12 months, they produced 584 referrals, primarily through, all of these include email. Some were exclusively email campaigns, some had other aspects to it, some Facebook advertising as well. But this, like the referral campaign, the email, obviously email exclusively, and then the dog trainers, dental client, the first campaign, those were heavily email, but also included some other tactics as well. But one of my favorite things that we do is help save time. We get this a lot from clients, where we're saving them 10 to 15 hours every single month through our use of email, and that's through creating these automated email campaigns that work in the background for you and your business. They help to qualify, they help to overcome objections, answer questions, to educate, and ultimately to prime prospects so that they are predisposed to doing business with you. So it frees up a lot of your time so that you can spend that elsewhere, doing more important things in your business, or spending time with the family, or kicking back on the beach. Doesn't matter, baking bread like me. So it can be any of those things, but that's one of the things that we love to do as well. Okay, so let's talk about our subject today. Is why email, right? And I chuckle at this just because every time this subject comes up, and I talk with a lot of business owners, a lot of them have these questions, right? Well, isn't email outdated? Nobody reads email anymore. People hate getting email, or my clients, they don't want to hear from me. What have I got to say to them, kind of thing. And so it's an interesting conversation. It'll typically, as we're discussing different strategies for their business and in their industry, email will inevitably come up, because it's a huge part of of our success that we've had. And a lot of people will react like this guy, where they'll hear me, and then they'll really hear me that I'm saying email, and they're totally taken aback, like, what are you talking about? And a lot of that just stems from this idea of nobody wants another email. And that is a statement I've heard countless times in my in my life, and I don't think that's an accurate statement. If you look at, if I were to change that, I would say nobody wants an irrelevant email. Okay, because if I were to ask you, well, okay, if nobody wants another email, what if it was an email from a personal friend, your best friend from high school that you haven't talked to in 12 years? Would you want that email, or would you say, no, sorry, I just can't take another single email? Of course, you'd open that right up and you'd dive right into that email and absorb every last word, most likely. And that's the point, right? It's not about the medium. It's not about the medium of email. It's really more about the messaging and the content of that email. You've got to match it to your audience, and that's why you see, a lot of people will. That's why people binge on Netflix. Like, they get one thing, they get the content, and they just keep watching and watching. The same thing can be said of any medium, but if you do email right, you're sending the right message to the right people, and they want to read that. Okay, so that's one thing we'll talk about a lot. But another thing is, I kind of will think of email as the rollerblades of marketing, where it used to be super cool. It was fairly new, and people were having a lot of success, or just thought it was cool back then, and so they were doing more of it. And now it's not cool. It's that transition where people they just, because it's not the sexy object, they just don't do it anymore. The shiny new object, they don't do it as much, or they don't do it very well. And there's a lot of reasons for why people hate on email. Like I mentioned, it's just not new. It's been around for a long time. And when we are used to something, having something for a long time, we tend to devalue that. We take it for granted. There is, we talked about this before, but people don't want another email. Kind of debunk that a little bit, or that email is boring. Okay, and that we were going to get into that one specifically. And that's one of the things that we'll do a lot with our clients, is to change that paradigm and make it so that it's very engaging. And we'll talk about how we do that later on. But they also tend to treat email like it's on the verge of disappearing. Like it is going the way of the dinosaurs, and will never be back. And so they don't want to touch it. Or I've heard it all. It's so funny what people say about email. But let's get into what really makes email just so darn special. Okay, is there's a tremendous power that comes from email because it's been around for a long time. It's been about 50 years from the first email, technically the first email was sent. And so in technology standpoint, that is a long time, right? I mean, 50 years is a tremendously long time. And I think that is very important. I've got a quote on the next slide that talks about from Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, why that's important. But that's a tremendous selling point for me, is that it's been around, the stability of email, and it hasn't really changed all that much. You take Facebook, or you take Google, for example, and you see all these algorithmic changes that are happening, and people are scrambling to adjust and change that. You see all those adjustments that have occurred, those corrections, or whatever the case may be, and it leaves people scrambling on to try and figure out, okay, how do we do this now? But email, in contrast, hasn't changed all that much. It has stayed relatively the same. There have been, obviously, there's new email service providers and ways to customize your inbox and anti-spam regulations and things like that. But overall, you still have a ton of latitude when it comes to email, especially in terms of messaging, in terms of layout and design. And those are tremendous assets that you can take advantage of. And that's, what this one talk about. You're controlling the look and feel. Got ahead of myself, but because you look at Facebook, for example, and you can customize a post to an extent. You look at other social media outlets, Twitter, and even on Google, and the rules and regulations that they have in play. There's certain, Twitter, you only have 140 characters to get your message across and things like that. But email, man, those gates are open wide in terms of what the content, in terms of how you format that content for readability. There's just a lot of options there that allow you to have more success, in my opinion. It's very intimate. It's like talking one-on-one. It's having a private conversation with someone. When you do it right and you're speaking to the right people, then you can have a very, very deep conversation with someone. And I love it because you're less likely to, you're less likely to be distracted away. Yes, you're still probably consuming it reading the message on a phone, and so you will have those typical phone notifications. But when you're on Facebook, for example, or even when you're on Google, there's so many links driving you elsewhere, and it's just a lot of noise. And email can be very clean. So that's what I love about it. This is another one about email that is not talked about as often as it should, is that it allows you to have ownership of the list. Okay, so Facebook, Instagram, Google, if they decide not to play with you, if you get kicked out of their sandbox, then you are done. Like, you can't, it's over. They have full control of that. But if email, you still, if you were to have to start over from scratch, but you still had all your client list, man, and you had email, it would be so much easier to get back up and get going like you used to be. And so you have a lot of control over that. And actually, because you have control over that, it allows you to take more advantage of things like Facebook, for example, through retargeting messages and retargeting campaigns and ads like that. So very, very powerful. It is also super affordable. Okay, you compare the costs of of email marketing versus SEO, for example, or direct mail, or even Facebook, Instagram ads, pay-per-click, things like that. Email is very, very affordable. Plus, you can do so many things. It is incredibly versatile, where you can nurture clients. People, you can reach clients at all different stages of the conversion process. So if someone's so let's say someone who's just barely discovering that they have a need for your product or service, as opposed to the person who's ready to whip out their card and purchase. There's a lot of stages in between those two, and you can speak to them at every single stage and help nurture them along, nudge them along until they're ready to make that purchase. And you can do that through education. You can do that through kind of positioning and building rapport with them, helping them to know, like, and trust you, and then qualifying them as well to make sure that they are a good prospect for you. And last, we touched on this before, but just the ability to save time and effort allows you to duplicate yourself and duplicate yourself in a very effective way, where it gets done the same way every single time. So we look at it as performing at concert pitch, right? So where you give your best presentation, and then you can create an email campaign based around that, and so that's delivered every single time. It doesn't matter if you personally are having a bad day, that you're sick, or you spent the night with a sick child the night before, and you didn't get any sleep, and so you're not feeling like that your typical salesman. Once you have it created, it can work for you all the time, and that's what it opens up so many doors for you. It also can create a cash surge. We mentioned that one email campaign for a photographer, $7,600, just like that, from one single email campaign. So very, very powerful. It can also be very timely and specific. So you can create those automated email campaigns that will go over the course of, say, a week or 2 weeks or a couple of months even. But you can also do a very timely campaign where it's just today, just because I have an announcement. And so I did that, for example, I did that one to people on my list, where I sent them an email just this morning as a reminder about this webinar, just to share and say, hey, if you're busy, no worries, I'll send you a link after, but just here's a quick reminder, right? So it could be very timely, very specific to what's going on, specific offer or specific event or something like that. Here's this quote I was referencing, but it's such a powerful quote by a guy who certainly knows what he's doing when it comes to business, Jeff Bezos, who I just looked it up. He's worth like $203 billion, I think. I'm like, whoa, that's B with a billion with a B. But he said this. He said, I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And that is a very interesting question. It's a very common one. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that the second question is actually the more important of the two, because you can build a business strategy around the things that are stable in time. And this is how I feel about email, where it's been pretty much the same over the last 50 years. When it's all boiled down to it, it's nearly the same. And so it gives you that chance to build on this for the future. Okay, so let's get into some of the specifics. Let's talk nitty-gritty for a little while, and then we'll show some actual examples, and then we'll see how we're doing on time. Then we'll finish with some Q&A. So how to get your emails opened and read. So this is the first step, right? I mean, if you're not getting your emails opened, then you have zero chance of success. Okay, so one of the first things that we recommend is ask yourself, why am I sending this email? Is there a reason that I'm sending this out? If I'm sending it just to send it, don't send the email. Okay, you have to have a purpose with your email, and it should all your purposes should align with objectives and goals and desired outcomes of your audience. Okay, so don't just do it because, oh, I want to make more sales. It has to come from a place of value and of benefit to your audience. Okay, so what do you want the reader to do? Again, these are questions that you work through as you're preparing your content for your email. What, in the end, if you were to reverse engineer the outcome of this particular situation. Say, in the end, I want this reader to click on this link, or I want the reader to respond and say, yes, I'm interested. What do you want them to do? Start with that, and then you can work your way back and reverse engineer the process. Okay, be specific in what action you're asking them to take. Okay, so this is also it's the next level from this bullet point B. What do you want the reader to do? Is now it's be very specific in what action you're asking them to do. And a lot of times that means spelling it out in plain English. Click here, click right now. Be very specific with your words so that there's no confusion whatsoever on what you're asking them to do. And oftentimes we'll do that in multiple ways. And then this is another big one, is a lot of people tend to try and do too much with one single email. They're sending 6 different offers for 4 different products or whatever the case may be, and they're just asking the reader to do too much. And when it's too much, when there's confusion or when there's overwhelm, it results in inaction. Then nothing gets done. Okay, so be very specific with one clear goal in your email. Mention that, but go deep with that message. Okay, so if you're, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep, stay an inch wide and go a mile deep with that message. Really draw out the benefits as they pertain to the audience or to the reader, and spell out illustrate what that looks like to them. The result of taking action on your offer, or the result of not taking you up on your offer. What's going to happen if they choose to, let's say, not get treatment on a tooth that's failing them. We work with a lot of dental clients, so that came to mind. But what type of consequence will they face if they are not exercising regularly, if they're not attending their workouts on a consistent basis, if you're a gym, for example? So go deep with your message and help them realize the likely consequences of action or inaction. And then last is to make it easy to take the next step. You don't want them to jump through 17 different hoops. You want to reduce as much of the friction as possible in doing business with you. So you want them to, instead of saying, just click here, and then you're going to scroll down to the bottom of the page, and then you're going to fill out this form, and then once you receive the confirmation email, then respond with what date works for you. There's so many steps to that. You don't want to. You're gonna lose. Every step is each additional step that you require them to pass through is gonna lose people. So we try and make it as easy as possible. That's why a lot of times you'll see on the end of our emails is simply saying respond yes, and we'll take care of the rest. You just want them to raise their hand and say I'm interested, and then you can work through the process of getting them to getting all the information you need in an easy manner through by conversing with them after the fact. So that's a great one that a lot of people miss. All right, so step 1, get your email open. It all starts with the subject line. Okay, so and we look at it as the headline for your email. Headlines are a tremendous part of the success. They have a tremendous impact on the success of any campaign that you have, and especially email. Because if you don't have a compelling headline, oftentimes you're going to lose the reader and they won't even open it. And if they don't open it, you're guaranteed to fail, right? It doesn't matter what kind of offer you make, how irresistible it is. If you don't get that email opened, you will fail. Okay, so it starts with a subject line, and good subject lines will do a couple of different things, and you can approach them in different ways. And these aren't the only ways, but these are the ways that have worked best for us. Is one, to start with agitating a problem. So if you know of an existing problem that they're facing, if you know your audience well enough, and this is a huge key to success in any marketing campaign, is knowing your audience. Once you know who they are, you understand what their pain points are, and you can speak to those pain points. And so good subject lines will agitate a problem. They'll speak directly to the challenge that they're facing. They will also tap into a desired outcome, something that they're looking forward to in the future, something that they've been striving for their entire life. So good subject lines will tap into that as well. Others will arouse curiosity. They might ask a question, or they might A classic headline that worked so well for so long. This was written probably, let's see, 60 years ago, but it said, "Are you making these mistakes? Are you making these same mistakes in English?" or something like that. And it's been adapted so many times, that's why I'm confusing it, because I've seen it in so many different variations. But asking, kind of hooking them in with your headline so that they want to read more. It's kind of it's more along the same lines of the agitating of problems. We won't spend more time there, but let me show you some examples of ones that we've used that have worked well for us. Eek, I need your help. So this desire to help is something that's, we all feel that at certain points, as we want to help people intrinsically. We're intrinsically motivated like that. And so this is a good one to use depending on your message. Gourmet made to order chocolate for you. This was a promotional event that we did for a dental office where they were having, hey, if you came in for treatment on Valentine's Day, we've got someone who's making chocolate, made from scratch chocolates right here, and you can have some just for coming in, and you could buy additional ones if you want, but just because you were willing to come in on Valentine's Day, which is traditionally slow day for dental, then you can have chocolate. And that worked pretty well. This one's another great one. I totally blew it. It's a damaging omission, and it catches people off guard because it's very offsetting. People don't normally just start conversation with, "Oh, well, let me tell you about when I totally messed up." I mean, it's very relatable. It shows vulnerability, and as a result, it builds trust, and people they want to read more. Okay, this is another one too that's kind of demonstrating that you didn't foresee this happening. Never thought this would happen, and people are like, "Never thought what would happen," and they click on and want to see more. This was a great one too, is a 1-star review. Typically when something like that occurs, you want to shuffle it under the rug and not mention those type of things, but because it's perceived as being negative. But it can also, you can flip the script on this and really control the narrative if you use this in the right way. We've done this with some clients too, where they've had negative reviews, and we use this as an educational tool to really qualify people as well. But a great example of this was a couple of years ago, maybe longer. Time is blurry to me. When you have kids, it just gets blurry, right? But it was on the Wasatch Front. It was actually close to the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon by that 7-Eleven. There's a big billboard, and it was an advertisement for Snowbird Ski Resort. And imagine this huge, wide angle shot of the skier just ripping down the mountain, wide open. There's nobody around. It's deep powder's flying everywhere. Up his face, his jacket is covered, everything like that. It's got the Snowbird logo, but then up in the left corner, you've got a 1-star review. It shows 1, gold star, 4 other ones, so 1 out of 5 stars, and then it has the caption, "Too much powder from Jason in California," or something like that, and it was just such a good use of taking what's historically seen as a negative, something negative about your business, and turning that into a positive, saying, too much. We want people who love deep snow, who want to ski deep snow. We want powder lines for days, whatever, and that was a great example of that. Here's another fun one that we did for our dental clients. Is the ugly truth about crowns. It catches people off guard. Normally you wouldn't see someone like a doctor say, "Well, let me tell you an inside secret. Let me tell you about, some dirt in the dental industry." I mean, it shows trust, I think, because you're being vulnerable. You're showing, it's another type of damaging admission, and it makes people it piques up their interest. Okay, step 2. So that's all about getting your emails opened. Now we're going to talk about how to get your emails read. Okay, so one of the best ways to do this, honestly, the best way that I know is to use stories. Hands down, is to use stories. And you can use everyday stories, things that happen to you. Those ones, I love those just because then it's personal and people get to know you a little bit better. But they don't have to be your stories either. You can just be stories. We are, as humans, we're wired for stories, and you've seen this in countless settings, right? Whether you are at a large group meeting, let's say, it could be a business conference, or you could be, let's say, a church, or just even around the campfire or with friends, you know, and you have that person who's just a natural born storyteller or who has always the craziest stories. I've got, you know, I think of my friend Blake, who is like that, and he's from Alaska, and he attracts experiences. And so you know, he's talking about this. He took this trip from Alaska all the way down to California in his VW bus, and they get stopped in the Yukon because their engine goes out, and they end up fixing the mechanic's roof in order to get him to fix the bus. And this is like a tenth of the whole entire story, and you're just riveted listening to this guy because you're like, man, such a crazy story. But that's how we are as humans. You know, when someone goes into a story, you know, let's say before that, if you're in a conference and people are just, you know, spouting out data and spreadsheets and things like that, and then all of a sudden they break into a story, what happens? All the heads pop up, you know, and everyone is like, okay, I'm listening now. But that's the power of a story, right? And they're great. They're a great way to drive home the point, because then people will remember the story. Okay, and I'll show you some examples of that here in a bit. They're very memorable. They're easy to recall. Okay, as a story, like, oh yeah, I remember that story. What was he talking about? Oh yeah, and then how he related that to this part of my life and things like that. So very, very powerful. Another cool thing about stories is that it allows people to visualize themselves in the story, which is what we often do when we are listening to a story or when we are engaged in a story, is we see ourselves in that setting or in that context. And that's what you want. You want people to be engaged. You want people to be absorbing the content, and stories are a great way to do that. It also can show the transformation that can occur with your help. So you're showing them how to bridge that gap between where they are currently and where they can be is through stories. Great way to do that. Another way to do this is to really let your personality shine through. So I like to say, be you times 10, you know, really almost exaggerate who you are in your emails, because you don't want to be boring at all. Like, that's the curse of marketing and advertising, is you're boring and people just don't want to pay attention to you. They just tune you out because it doesn't do anything for you. But if you can be interesting, if you can be engaging, if you can be compelling, a lot of times that has to do with personality, and because you might not think that you've got like a magnetic personality or anything, but trust me, when you start sharing more about who you are and your personal interests and your opinions and thoughts, you are going to attract the right people that are like-minded, you know, people that share that same mentality or that same disposition. Okay. Another thing too, when it comes to getting your emails read, is avoid looking too flashy. A lot of times we want it to be super clean and polished up and have cool graphics and things like that. But the problem with that is that a lot of people can tell it's an advertisement. You know, it's too well done, you know, and so people will just discard it as an ad, and they don't like being bombarded with ads all the time. Okay, it can scream advertisement, it's overly promotional, it's too in your face, it's too aggressive, whatever the case may be. We tend to avoid that, and you'll see in our examples that a lot of them are very, how do I say, they're very personalized looking. They look like I just sat down and typed this on, you know, either on my cell phone or on my desktop. I was just sending you an email. And that's because that's how people communicate. That's how real people communicate. Okay, and you want yours to be seen as a real person and not some nameless, faceless corporation. Again, it speaks to being personal looking, and I'll show you how to do that. Another one is to make this a one-on-one conversation. Sometimes the tendency when you are broadcasting, especially to a group of people, is to speak as if you were talking to a large group, you know, instead of focusing in or pretending like you're just speaking to the one person. You're just speaking to Dave. Dave, I'm talking to you, buddy. You know, I mean, it's just me and you. You want that same type of familiarity. You want that same type of intimacy with your reader. Like, it's just you two. You're not trying to broadcast it to an audience. I'm just here for you. And we'll show you some examples of that, how we interject. We'll utilize, you know, names and things like that are, again, customized to the reader every time. But it's a great way to speak to the one individual. And then another point on that is just to use everyday language. Don't try and be flowery or verbose or anything like that to make yourself seem better or anything. Just say it like it is. Say it like you would say it. And if you have an extensive vocabulary, I think that's fine. Like, you don't have to dumb it down per se, but you also want to cater that to your audience. So I have a client that's an engineering firm, and we have to change their message because they could be very technical and very jargon laden in their language if because that's their natural tendency. They're dealing with it all the time, but their audience for their particular email campaigns are not. They don't have that technical background, and so it's a great example of when you need to change your language just to suit your audience. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into this, and then we'll take some questions. We'll keep this moving. Hopefully, it's not too boring right now. But so here's a good example. I'm going to move my little pop out thing. How do I skew that over? Okay, that's better. All right, so here's an example for a health practitioner. And again, this is illustrating the use of stories in particular and how it really draws you in to the email. Okay, so it's customized up to, hey, Stacy, I want to tell you a story that proves you already have everything it takes to release the chronic pain and discomfort that's been holding you back. And background info, this health practitioner is someone who's schooled and educated in the Alexander technique, and they help people with chronic pain. They help people to find, to undo all the stress in their body by themselves through different techniques. Anyway, okay, so we talked about that pain and discomfort that's holding you back. This story is important because I hear from too many people who doubt themselves on this issue of moving beyond temporary relief and into long-term ease. Here's what happened. In the 1800s, Niccolo Paganini, one of the greatest violinists of all time, was about to perform in a sold-out opera house in Italy. Right before the performance, he was running around backstage like a maniac. The stage manager said, Niccolo, 5 minutes, and you're on. So Niccolo went into a room, grabbed a violin, went out to stage, and gave the performance of his life. Huge, thunderous standing ovation. When he finally got backstage, the stage manager came in and couldn't wait to speak to the musician. Let's see, go to the next one. He needed the answer to a question burning in his mind since the moment the frantic Paganini took the stage. Niccolo, you were a madman before the performance. Usually you're calm, you're cool, calm, and collected. What happened? The violinist said, right before I went on stage, I couldn't find my violin. I had to borrow somebody else's lousy violin. But I'm glad it happened because today I learned the most important lesson in my whole musical career. Tonight I learned that the music is not in the violin. The music is in me. It's the same with all of us. The music is in you. The music is in all of us. Stop fussing about your violins. Stop fussing about how you've tried everything from chiropractic to massage therapy to ice and heat. Instead, recognize that you already have the tools inside of you to find healing and long-term ease. You are not lacking ability. You are blocking it. You don't have to be ready. You won't be perfect after our first AT lesson or the 100th, but you can eradicate the underlying cause of pain. I can show you how. Reply yes to this email and I'll take care of the rest. Julia. And that has a little PS that drives to a podcast that she's featured on, but it's a great example of utilizing story to drive home the message. In her case, to help people see that you don't need to keep going and going to all these different professionals to try and cure your problems. You have all the tools inside of you. You just need to utilize those tools. It's also very entertaining. As you get into that story, you just want to keep going, right? I mean, that's what's so fun about stories. You want to finish the story. It also has kind of a, oh, that makes sense type of feeling, after you go through the story and you see how it connects the dots for you for this particular service that she's providing. It's very easy to consume. Each line leads to the next. And that's, again, going back to the ability to format your emails so that even visually it's easy to go through. You notice how these are short sentences. It's not probably the way you'd set it up if you were a novelist or anything like that, but it's so easy to go through and scan through because they're only one lines and it's boom, 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 just keeps you going, okay? And then notice the one specific action that it's asking for at the end, it's just reply yes, and then she'll she'll get you started on the process. Very clear action in the end. Here's another example is for a dental office. Do you like football, Jessica? Yeah, me neither. But I think you'll like the story just the same. AJ Rose, Kentucky's starting running back, receives the handoff, shuffles to the edge, and then bolts upfield, running in and out of defenders until there's nothing between him and the end zone. The fans are going nuts as they watch him zip down the field. But instead of crossing the goal line, scoring an important touchdown for his team, and igniting the home field crowd, Rose starts to let up. He takes his foot off the pedal just a bit. And what happens? He gets tackled, only a few yards shy of the end zone. And to make matters worse, Kentucky goes on to turn the ball over to the other team. They don't even score any points, despite being only a few yards away. And this was actually an animated GIF, but this was just a screenshot. So it's not animated in this case, but in the email it was animated. So it showed him getting tackled like right by the end zone. And this goes on to say, here, let me move this so I can see better. Here's why I share this. Have you ever done nearly all the work, but haven't enjoyed the reward? Ever felt like our friend AJ Rose and been stopped at the 98-yard line? I know I have, and it's incredibly frustrating. Here you have worked so hard and gotten so close, only to get stopped short or get tackled. Just like it cost AJ Rose and his Kentucky Wildcats, this is happening right now with your dental benefits. Think about that for a second. You have already earned all of those dental benefits and can now apply them towards any treatment you might need. But you are also moments away from seeing them all get reset at the end of this year. And I'd hate to see you miss out on treatment you need because of this. So I urge you, use your dental benefits towards treatment before they expire. Appointments are still available, but they fill up really fast during the holidays. Dr. T. P.S. Not sure if you have dental benefits remaining. Call our office and Kara will find out for you. Again, just very, very great use of a story to stir up emotion and to get them emotionally connected to what you're saying, to the message. It engages the reader because, like, it puts you in their place. Like we talked about before, story has that ability to draw you in and you start picturing yourself in that same situation. You start asking yourself, well, when have I gotten almost all the way? I'm really good at starting things. I'm just not great at finishing them. And you start seeing that in your mind. It also is, this is a great example of how when you're telling a story, it removes this idea of just, oh, I just want to get through this email. Like I need to get through this email. You're looking through it, you're seeing the length, but when it's story based and it's engaging, you're not concerned about the length. You just want to get to the end of the story. You don't want the story to end. That's what's another thing that's cool about stories. It's a great overall message to this one as well. There's life lessons in there, just about completing what you start. And so even if they don't take action, and you're not going to get everyone to take action on every single email, that's just unrealistic. You're only going to get a percentage, but even if they don't, you still contributed to them, contribute some type of value to them through this lesson, right? And people will see that. They'll say, oftentimes we'll get emails, clients will get emails back and be like, dude, that was such a great email. Thank you for sending that. And it makes me laugh because you never hear people say that, like, oh, thanks for that email, especially from a business. But let's do one. I had to dig this one back out of the archives, but this was one that I wrote for my photography business probably 10 years ago. So back when I had a photography company, it was on my own, and I was doing email as a huge part of how I was able to grow it and scale that, or grow it to become a nationwide company where I'd serve as nationwide clients. But this was an email that I put together that one of my goals was just to make it have some personality, to really change it. And so it's not just, hey, we're having a sale, here's the numbers kind of thing, but let's play on this. And actually, I think during the time, if I remember correctly, there was maybe a movie that had come out with a superhero, and so that was all the rage. It's probably at McDonald's and for kids and things like that too. So I wanted to play off that. So this was the message. I said, the time has come for justice to rule. Living rooms, offices, bedrooms are struggling to retain hope as the dreaded photo displays of yesteryear dominate the walls. But no more. Starting now, April 30th until Tuesday, March 5th. That actually should be May 5th. There's a couple of typos in here, and that's one of the lessons in this. But we are running a super promotion on canvas wraps in honor of those mighty heroes who happen to wear masks, skin-tight suits, or scantily clad clothes. Alarm the troops for these massive deals. And then it gives some of the specs and discounts, whatever. Normally, the price tag on these beauties is $175 for the 16 by 20, $275 for the 20 by 30, and $435 for the 30 by 40. But because it's time to show forth and regain our walls, another typo, they are nearly 40% off, which brings them to only 105, blah, 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 blah. And this was so old that there was apparently an image there that I no longer have. And so it's default. But you ready? Let's do this. Email me to get started on your canvas wraps. P.S. I only have 3 canvas wraps for each size, 16 by 20, 20 by 30, 30 by 40. So let me know ASAP if you want one. But it's just a great way to show personality, to involve the superhero theme that was so popular at the time because of what was going on in the media. And so it plays on that. It's a very specific offer. And like I mentioned before, it is far from perfect. There are several mistakes in there. And one of the follow-up emails did correct the date issue and things like that. But that really the lesson that I love showing this, because it is another damaging admission. Like, it does not have to be perfect. You know, it's more important to get it out there than it is to be perfect. B+ is absolutely acceptable. B- is acceptable too. But it also utilizes the power of scarcity. When things are scarce, resources are scarce, we tend to place a higher premium or value on them, and we are moved by deadlines. And so whenever you can utilize a deadline, it will move people to action and typically be a lot more effective in driving action than without one. All right, last one, and then we'll do some Q&A. So this was for a life coach, and whose favorite movie happened to be this movie that we're going to talk about. It says, one of my favorite movies is Tron, both the 1982 version and the more recent 2010 version. It's a sci-fi action movie about a computer engineer, Kevin Flynn, that gets trapped inside the digital world. Oh, how I love this movie. Just ask my family. And there's one scene in the 2010 movie that I think about often. It's one that often gets overlooked, but the outcome of the scene is the single most important part of the entire plot. Sam Flynn, son of the missing Kevin Flynn, is visited by his dad's former colleague, Alan Bradley, who begins to inform Sam that he was paged last night from his dad's office in the old arcade. Here's a little snapshot of this scene. He says, here's how it plays out. Alan, I was paged last night. Came from your dad's old office at the arcade. So, the number's been disconnected for 20 years. 2 nights before your dad disappeared, he came to my house. He said he was about to change everything. Science, medicine, religion. He wouldn't have left that, Sam. He wouldn't have left you. Alan, you're acting like I'm gonna find him sitting there working and he'll say, hey kiddo, lost track of time. Alan smirks and tosses the building keys to Sam and replies, wouldn't that be something? Oh, I just love this scene. What would have happened to Sam had Sam not gone to investigate? How different would his life be? Everything in that movie hinges on that one decision, on that one invitation from Alan to Sam. Why am I sharing this? I bring this up because each of us finds ourselves in the exact same situation. You have the opportunity to move forward in your life and advance yourself as a person and as a professional. You see, last night I was paged from the future Mark Thackeray. This section was all customized to each reader, who told me all about the incredible life you created, your numerous accomplishments, and the scores of people that you have influenced, all because of your one decision. The same invitation I'm going to extend to you has been the catalyst that sparked a much brighter future for thousands of people. Next Thursday begins our 3-day Art of Mentoring training, one of our most popular programs to date. And the reason why everyone loves it is because it walks you through how to rise up to your full potential. It literally changes people for good. Now, you might be thinking, just like Sam did, but Kurt, you're acting like this training is going to completely change my life for the better. Like I won't be afraid of speaking up or sharing my voice. Like I'll be an influence to all those people. Wouldn't that be something? Now, I don't really know everything that will happen in the future, but what I do know is that when you make the decision to change and fully commit, your life starts to change. Things start to happen for you, all from that one decision. Your time is now. Join us at the Art of Mentoring. You will not regret it. Click here to reserve your spot. Look forward to seeing you there. And this is just a great use of story to build, really kind of reinforce that relationship, even grow that relationship by sharing more information about yourself. You know, we do business with those that we know, like, and trust. And this is another way to do that, is to infuse some of those details into your email broadcasts. It connects the reader to a future goal through story. You know, it can help them see that there are those moments in time where you have the opportunity to make a decision, and that changes the trajectory of your life, just like in the movie. It addresses, and this is one thing that's super fun to do, is it can address hesitations, it can address potential objections or questions. Just like he says here, you're acting like this training is going to completely change my life. Like all these things are going to change just because I go to this 3-day seminar. And he said, well, wouldn't that be something? Maybe it will, kind of thing. But he goes on to clarify and say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know this, that you can start seeing results, blah, blah, blah. So it's a very, very powerful way to address any of those questions that are going to come up naturally. Sometimes people will vocalize those, sometimes they don't, but they'll have those questions regardless. And so if you can address those in the copy, even better. And then it ends with a clear call to action. So very, very fun things to do, and they can be extremely powerful, extremely effective. But in summary, ask yourself, why am I sending this email? You have to have a clear purpose of sending that email. Focus on one specific goal. Don't have your email do too many things. Make it easy to take the next step. So your call to action should be it should not only be clear, but it should be easy. You want to remove as much of the friction as possible. Utilize the power of story whenever you can. Infuse it with personality, and then avoid looking like an advertisement. And that is it, you guys. That's me and Michael Scott saying thank you. But I appreciate you guys staying on this. I love sharing about this. We've had a lot of success with this, and it's fun. It's fun to help contribute to others' growth and success as well. So thank you. Let's see, any questions, Josie? Oh, I'm just looking at the chat now. Cool, Kimberly. Yeah, it looks like we did cover a couple of those. We have a ton more. If you ever want some, just let me know. You can shoot me an email. Happy to share things that we've done. We've like I mentioned before, we're happy to do that. So, any other questions?
Thanks, Mark. This has been great.
My pleasure. It's fun. It's yeah. There's a lot of fun creative that goes behind it, and yeah, it can do some real good for businesses too.
And we will have this recorded, so we'll be posting it up on the website, and people will be able to watch it later. So if there's something that you want to watch again, you'll be able to rewatch this and be like, okay, that's what I was remembering, or if you just want to refresh your memory, I'm going to definitely be watching it again. So
yeah, and if you have any questions that come up, in the future, feel free to reach out. Happy to answer those questions, and they can be technical questions too about email deliverability and what measurements to look at. I didn't want to get into all the technical stuff here, but yeah, we certainly do take a look at those things as well. So if you have any of those questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
perfect. And Mark, I might have to just do a separate meeting with you because I send out a lot for the Business Council, and so I may need a little bit of help that way too.
Sure. Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, give you some tips.
Little tips. Yep. Perfect. Well, if there aren't any questions, oh, it looks like I've got a question. Oh, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording then.